immediately following this injury, this is like huge news that like her strain is so significant that odds are dropping and ticket prices are dropping. Like, I think that's so wild and like just really goes to show like how much the attention around women's basketball has changed and like how much of that has been because of Caitlin specifically. Hello, and welcome back to Sarah Says So, your go-to show for women's sports news. Happy Friday, everyone. I hope you're ready to get into it. I have a great show for you this week, and we have a lot to discuss. I really have to milk as much as I can out of the PWHL before now that the games are over, so to speak. So, before we get into everything, make sure you're following us on all of the social media. So that's going to be at Sarah Says So ETB on Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok, plus anywhere you get your podcasts. I do want to give a quick shout out to Zan Bando, ETB host of Bando's Breakdowns. He's been absolutely instrumental in helping me get the show off the ground and running the on-screen graphics for the first 2 episodes, and I cannot thank him enough. That being said, the training wheels are off now, so to speak, so bear with me a little bit if you're watching this on YouTube and if there's anything weird with the graphics, just pretend you didn't notice, but I'm pretty confident in my skills. So, without further ado, today's lineup, we're going to be going over the PWHL finals now that those have wrapped up. I'm going to be grading all 6 of the inaugural PWHL teams for the season. We'll go over the 2 hiring updates for the 2 expansion teams, and then a quick few updates for the WNBA, and then we'll go over just a few pieces of miscellaneous news. So, starting off with the PWHL finals recap, Minnesota Frost remains the only team to win the Walter Cup now. They've done it 2 years in a row. I mean, it's not necessarily like impressive to say the only team to win the Walter Cup when there've only been 2 years, but it is pretty impressive, and I know the Frost fans are going absolutely crazy over it. It is the first time they've done it on home ice. So when they won last season over the Fleet out in Boston, technically Lowell, they won in Game 5 in front of a sold-out crowd, including yours truly. And as much as it was so painful to watch the Fleet lose the championship as a Boston fan, being able to witness the first, trophy ceremony and everything, I know I talked about it in episode 0, but it was just so cool to be able to witness that, historical moment of women's sports. And so I do think it is cool that Minnesota can say that they're the only team to have won the championship. But that series went to 4 games. All 4 games went to overtime. And so if in case you forgot, they were playing Ottawa Charge. And so the Charge won the first game, and then the Frost swept the next 3. So the Charge beat the Frost 2-1. The score was 2-1 actually in all 4 games. And they all went to single overtime with the exception of Game 3, which went to triple overtime. And the Frost scored that second goal with a thanks to Katie Knoll and her triple OT game-winning goal. Shout out to Katie Knoll, another Northeastern alum. I am wearing a Northeastern hat today just because as I was planning the show, I realized I was kind of talking about a lot of Northeastern people, not really on purpose. There are just a lot of really good women's hockey players from Northeastern. It's not my fault. Speaking of, even though she is on the Charge did not win the championship, goaltender Gwyneth Phillips was named the Ilana Kloss MVP for the playoffs at the final series. She led all goaltenders with a 1.23 goals against average and a .952 save percentage throughout 8 playoff starts, and posted 4 postseason wins, including a shutout, and she didn't lose a game in regulation throughout the entire playoffs. And as a reminder, this is, in fact, her rookie season. She made 33 saves in Game 4 before the Frost were able to score that one last goal. She also was a standout at Northeastern, so this isn't really surprising. I know I talk about it a lot, but I actually pulled the stats this time. She played 104 games there. She went 70, 15, and 4 with 22 shutouts and posted a .958 save percentage and a .96 goals against average. So I'm not surprised that she had a pretty impressive rookie season, but I am so incredibly thrilled for her. And it's my graduate school final season right now for the quarter I'm in, so I didn't actually watch this game, but seeing that she was named MVP and then I went back and I watched the ceremony of it was just so absolutely thrilling for someone who saw her has kind of watched her career relatively closely. I just cannot be more excited for her. I think she absolutely deserves all of the credit. And I'm really impressed with how the Charge have done this season, particularly given how they ended the first season when they ended 5th in the league and didn't make the playoffs last year. Speaking of performances, we're going to get into grading the inaugural 6 teams. So I'm basing this off of full season performance, not just playoffs, but for those 4 teams in the playoffs, I did include their playoff performance into my decision making a little bit. I also am going to mention how many points each team had a lot, pretty frequently. So in case you're unfamiliar or you forgot, the PWHL point system basically works like this. Each team earns standings points within a 3-2-1-0 system. So it basically is designed to incentivize competitive play for the entire 60 minutes that they're on the ice. And it rewards specifically regulation time wins. And so it all just depends. And essentially the players are incentivized to play as hard as they can in those 60 minutes of regulation to earn the maximum points. So a regulation win earns a team 3 points. An OT win or a shootout earns you 2 points. OT or shootout losses earn 1 point, and then regulation losses earn 0 points. So even if you're making it to that overtime, you're still getting 1 point either way, which is nice in the sense that it's rewarding teams that have just been defensively stellar and goaltenders that have been defensively stellar throughout that game. I think it's a really interesting system. And then in terms of standing tiebreaker procedure, I am just mentioning this because there were 3 teams that were tied in terms of points. There's basically different things to break it down, but they have 7 on the website that basically says go in this order for the tiebreaker procedure. So I'm just going to go over a couple of them because they didn't have to necessarily go all the way down the list for this season. But the following are used in order to determine playoff seeding. So 1, fewer number of games played. 2, greater number of games won, excluding overtime or shootout wins. And then greater number of games won, excluding games won only by shootout. So that would include regulation and OT wins. And then 4th is the greater number of games won by the club in any manner, so total wins. And then it just kind of goes on from there. But that's just a brief overview. So in terms of the actual grades, I'm going alphabetically by city, just because that was easy. So no one can come for me for doing the Fleet first. And I will say, I'm breaking my own heart here, giving them a C+. It was really hard. I actually had them at a B-, and then I moved it down. They finished the regular season 5th overall, so they didn't make the playoffs. They're one of those 3 teams that were tied for points, so they were actually tied with the Charge and the Frost at 44, which is ironic considering those were the 2 teams in the championship. They went 15-15 during that regular season, and they didn't make, or I already said that, they didn't make the playoffs. But some of the things factoring into my decision with giving them a C+, number 1, they really fell off from making from where they were last year in terms of making the championship series, which is understandable. I mean, if you think about other leagues, you're not necessarily seeing the same team every single year, but the Frost did it. And in a league as small as this one, I think that there's a little bit less room for grace in that sense. Other things, Alina Mueller was out for a little bit with her, I think it was a concussion. whenever she hit her head horribly in that one game, and I remember like jumping out off my couch when I saw it. And so she was out for a little bit, I think. I can't remember how many games she missed. It wasn't a ton, but when you're only playing 30 games in a season, every single game matters. In terms of points, you have Captain Hillary Knight. She led with 29, and she had 15 goals and 14 assists. And then Alina Mueller was second with 19 points, and Susanna Toppany had 18 points. So they have like a very significant gap in terms of who's actually producing on the ice. And it's really inconsistent in a way that it wasn't last season. And so as much as I love them so deeply, I had to give them a C+. They just didn't have it this year. And I have so much faith in them, but I'm also so scared to see what happens with the expansion and everything. But ultimately, I did end up going with a C+. The one thing I did also want to note is that Emma Soderberg, who's the second string goaltender behind Erin Frankel, had a really, really good season this year in comparison to last year. She was definitely a big bright spot for the team, and she played a lot towards the end of the season and really showed up when they needed her. So, small shout out to her. Second team after Boston, now we are going to be going to the champions, the Minnesota Frost. So, I'm giving them a B. And I understand that they just won the championship. I just talked about it for like a solid 5 minutes or something. But they finished the regular season 4th overall. They tied with the Charge and the Fleet at 44 points. They also were 15-15 with 7 overtime wins and 3 overtime losses. They then went on to win the playoffs, going 9-1 overall with 7 overtime wins and 1 overtime loss within those 9-1. They are the only Walter Cup champions, but again, it's only year 2. They're really overtime warriors. I mean, 7 overtime wins during the regular season and then 7 in the playoffs, 14 overtime wins. That's pretty impressive. And whenever you watch their overtimes too, they're really fighting for every single second that they're on the ice. And I mean, that's what you would want every team to do, but I feel like you see Minnesota do it in a little bit of a different way. They also really seem to know how to turn it on at the end of this season, given their performance in not only this year's playoffs, but last year's playoffs as well. So, I mean, I guess I'm giving them points for that, too. They also have a really good distribution of their points on their team in terms of leaders. So you have Kendall Coyne-Schofield with the most points at 24. She has 12 goals and 12 assists. And then 2023 draft first overall pick Taylor Heise has 22 points with 8 goals and 14 assists. And then Sophie Jakes has 22 points, 7 goals and 15 assists. So there's a pretty good distribution in terms of there's not one player getting all of the points, but even those goal numbers aren't super, super high. And I don't know. I also had to just demote them for the fact that there's always been some like that weird suspicious drama within the front office and like the GM leaving and everything. It just doesn't sit right with me. And also they're absolutely devoted for having Britta Curl on their team and drafting her, given the fact that she's openly incredibly transphobic and homophobic. And I mean, as bad as that is, by itself, the PWHL has so many players that identify and as members of and are members of the LGBTQ plus community. And so drafting someone like that was a questionable choice. And I mean, I thought about it a lot when the WNBA draft happened and Sedona Prince didn't get drafted, and a lot of the speculation surrounding that was because of the like abuse allegations from her like past partners, and which I think is completely valid. And I was watching that happen and I was like, God, I wish the PWHL had done something similar. I understand that Britta Curl is a great player, and unfortunately she was incredibly instrumental in a lot of these wins for them this season, especially in the playoffs. I still don't think that, like, as much as that might help you in terms of producing success on the ice or on the court, I don't think that being a bigot should be ignored. Call me crazy, I don't know. But yeah, so I absolutely took points off of the Frost for that one. So they got a flat B. I'm not really sorry for it. They make some crazy decisions. Shout out to them for winning again, but I don't know. I just always have a bad taste in my mouth when it comes to that team. So following the Frost, we will move on over to Montreal. So Montreal also got a B. They finished the regular season first overall. They had 53 points. And so they got those 53 points through 19 wins and 11 losses. 7 of those were overtime wins, and 3 of those 11 losses were overtime losses. They ended up coming third in the playoffs, unfortunately. They went 1-3 with that one win being an overtime win. They have a really good point distribution on this team with the 3 leaders, Marie-Philip Poulin, Laura Stacey, and Jennifer Gardner, all having pretty high points. So Poulin has 26 with 19 goals and 7 assists. Stacey has 22 with 11 and 11. And then Gardner, I never know how to say her name, I apologize. Shout out to you, Queen, has 18 points with 5 goals and 13 assists. So they have a good distribution here, but they actually have a pretty low goal production, which is what brought them down to like more of an even B than a B+. Poulin is the goal leader, as I said, with 19. And then Stacey, with her 11 goals, is actually their second highest goal scorer. And then Abby Burine and Catherine Dubois both have 6. And then Jennifer, whose name I can't say properly ever, has 5. So they really don't have a super strong sense of goal production. I mean, they have, like, Poulin and Stacey are really consistent. Shout out to them. Favorite couple in the league. But they really need to have more high, not necessarily even high scores, but just more consistency in terms of who's scoring and being able to have success with where they're moving the puck. And so ultimately I ended up going with a B, mostly because they had such a strong regular season. I mean, anytime the Fleet played them, I was like nervous. I was like, oh god, it's Montreal, we're probably going to lose. But I brought it down a little bit because of that low goal production and their playoff performance. But I have high hopes for them. I honestly think that they are one of, I mean, there are only 6 again, but one of the franchises that I'm interested in to see where they go the most in terms of just who they have on their team and the like transition they've made from year 1 to year 2. I find them really interesting. Now, for New York, the Sirens. Oh, 1 second. For those of you that are not watching, I accidentally put the wrong grade on the banner, but we don't need to worry about it. It's fixed now. New York got a C. To be completely transparent, this is the lowest grade I gave every team because it's the second year of the league and they're making so much progress for women's sports. I could not bring myself to give anyone lower than a C. It just like felt so anti who I am. I just couldn't do it. But New York got a C. They finished the regular season 6th overall. It's their second straight year in last place. So they finished with 26 points and went 9-15. 4 of those were overtime wins, and then 3 were overtime losses. And if you're doing that math, that's 12 regulation losses. So that's not great at all. That's also why their points are so low. If you're remembering, you don't get any points if you're losing just in regulation. And then obviously they didn't make the playoffs. The biggest problem that I noticed with New York is how incredibly low their goal production is. They have their top goal scorer with their 2024 first overall draft pick, Sarah Barber, but she only has 13. And then you have Alex Carpenter with 11, Jesse Eldridge with 9, Ella Shelton with 8, and Abby Rugg with 6. So there's just it's not the numbers that we're needing. And I don't want to give them a low grade, but like unfortunately, that's what you're producing. And that's honestly all I have to say about that. Sorry, New York. Maybe figure yourselves out and then things will be better. I don't know. I'm not a GM. Anyway, now that we're done with that, we have the highest awarded grade for the Ottawa Charge. And if anyone comes at me and says, oh, this is just because you love Glenn Phillips, no, it's not. And let me tell you why. So they finished the regular season third overall. They went 14-16. 2 of those were overtime wins. 4 of those were overtime losses. Their 73 goals allowed were the second lowest in the league. And then obviously they went to go and play second in playoffs. So they had 2 overtime wins and 3 overtime losses, with 5 total wins and 7 total losses. They had a pretty strong season, and then they turned it on absolutely in the playoffs. I am giving them some points for Glenn Phillips, but I'm giving them more points for the improvement overall. Last year, they finished 5th in the league and didn't make the playoffs. This year, they're making it all the way to the championship with a first-year goaltender, and they're playing really hard. They might have only won 1 game in the championship series, but they're taking every single game to overtime. And that's not something that can be really ignored. The one thing I think they could improve on a little bit is goal scoring. So their highest goal scorer, Teresa Vanisova, has 15, and then following her, the next highest is only 9 from Emily Clark. Shan D'Arcangelo has 8. Brianne Jenner has 7, and then Gabby Hewer has 5. So again, kind of similar to the issue that we just went over with New York, just low goal production. But they have, as much as they have that low goal production, they're producing a much, much, much different result than New York is. And then finally, we have the Toronto Centers. So they're also getting a C+, similarly to my girls on the Fleet. They finished the regular season 2nd overall. Oh, wait, no, there's such a chance that I meant that this is supposed to be the B that I had written for New York. I think that's actually the case. So, that's such a lie. The Toronto Scepters are getting a B, not a C+. So, that's fixed on the screen now. But they finished the regular season 2nd overall, like I said. They had 48 points, and then they were 15-15 with 3 overtime wins, 6 overtime losses. They came last in the playoffs, though. So they went 1-3. All of those were in regulation. And in those 4 games, they had 16 goals allowed. So they continued to fall in the playoffs. They went 2-3 in all regulation games in their playoff run last year. And they have a pretty good points distribution across their leaders, but it's almost all assists. Okay, actually, now that I'm reading back through my notes, this is absolutely supposed to be a C+. My brain's a little all over the place. My apologies. Back to the C+ for the Scepters. Their highest points score, their player with the highest points is Daryl Watts with 27, but that's from 12 goals and 15 assists. Hannah Miller has 24 points from 10 goals and 14 assists. And then Renata Fast has 22 from 6 goals and 16 assists. So all of those points are phenomenal, but they're mostly assists. And don't get me wrong, assists are fantastic. Assists get you goals. But on top of that, they have low goal production. So Jesse Comper has 9 goals, and the leading goal scorers, 3 of whom I've already mentioned, it's 12, 10, 9, 6, and 6. So Daryl Watts with 12, Hannah Miller with 10, Jesse with 9, Renata with 6, and then that last 6 is Sarah Nurse. So assists are really great, but not when you're not actually producing on the ice. And then their main goaltender, Kristen Campbell, has a .910 save percentage. She's good. I like her, but having 18 goals allowed in the playoffs is not ideal. So I actually honestly really am questioning why I said C plus because it was supposed to for sure be. No, this is the one that when I was doing it, I went back and forth between C plus and B minus, and I meant to write in my notes, oh, note that this was the team on the bubble, and I totally forgot to do that. I ended up just putting them lower mainly because of the playoff fallout. Um, you can have a great season, you can finish second overall like they did, but if you can't come to play when it matters, then that kind of sucks. So, unfortunately, they got a C plus, and that is my official ruling on the matter. Last quick thing on the PWHL, since I'm really milking it now that there are no more games, we're gonna do a quick little update on what I'm now calling the westward expansion. They have hired a general manager for both Vancouver and Seattle. So out in Vancouver, it's going to be it's either Kara or Kara. I honestly am not entirely sure how she said it, but as soon as I listen to an interview, I've only read the interviews, I will be more aware of that and I will make the appropriate pronunciation. But Kara Gardner Mori, so she's joining the PWHL after 14 seasons with Princeton women's ice hockey. So that's pretty exciting. She obviously has a lot of experience there. I'm assuming that New York will keep Sarah Fillier because that would be crazy if they didn't. But she is from Princeton, and so on the off chance that they don't protect her on their player protection list thing for the expansion draft, I would not be surprised if Vancouver scooped her up very quickly. But Jana Hefford, the PWHL Executive Vice President of Hockey Operations, spoke about the hiring of Kara, and so she spoke about both of them, actually, but I pulled the quotes for both of them, just because I think it kind of is always interesting to hear, what the league says and then see how it plays out, just from, a PR perspective, but, maybe that's just because I'm a nerd about, the media. But so Jada said, Kara brings exceptional experience at all levels of the game, a deep understanding of player development, and an unwavering passion for advancing women's sports. Her track record at Princeton speaks for itself, instilling a strong culture, recruiting top talent, developing elite athletes, and winning championships. Kara becoming the general manager of PWHL Vancouver is a powerful addition to our league. So that's really exciting. I'm really I'm thrilled with any announcement just because I can't wait to see all the news about it and what they're going to do with both teams. And as obviously integral and important GMs are, I really can't wait for the coaching announcements. But for Seattle, the GM over there is going to be Megan Turner. So she actually is joining Seattle following 2 amazing seasons as assistant GM for the Boston Fleet. So I actually found out this news from the Fleet Instagram because they posted a little goodbye thing for her that was really sweet. But as sad as it is to see her leave that organization, I could not be more thrilled to see that not that taking an outside hire like they did with Kara would be a bad thing at all, but I do like that the league early on is showing that they're promoting from within in terms of just encouraging that development. I think that's a really positive trend to set in terms of rewarding people like Megan who've been so crucial in building, according to the PWHL news release, the roster and strong organizational culture like she did in Boston. But I'm just really excited to see kind of an example of both bringing new people into the league, but also rewarding those who have already been working really hard. And then Jana Hefford said about Megan, she brings an extraordinary combination of hockey experience, strategic vision, and professionalism to PWHL Seattle. During her time in Boston, Megan distinguished herself as a big-picture thinker who quickly earned the respect of players and staff alike. She's the ideal person to lead this exciting new chapter in Seattle. So, absolutely thrilled and incredibly excited for both of them. In terms of expansion draft stuff, I talked about it a bunch in last week's episode. So if you didn't listen to that, go back and like find that section because I went over it pretty in depth. But brief reminders, June 3rd, player protection lists are due. And so that's this Tuesday, right? That's Tuesday? Yeah, that's Tuesday. So that's this Tuesday. And then the following day, the exclusive signing window opens and lasts for 5 days. So from the 4th to the 9th. And then June 24th at 6 Central is the 2025 PWHL draft. Oh, I totally missed something in my notes. Oops. So the signing window is 4 days. It's the 4th to the 8th, and then the 9th is the expansion draft. The 24th is the draft. My bad. My brain's a little all over the place today, and that's totally on me, but, sometimes there are just days like that, and it happens. But that is all I have in terms of PWHL things to discuss. But before we get into the next news, which will be WNBA, we're going to take a short break for a message from our friends at Playback. Presented by Playback. Watching sports is more fun with others, but we spend too much of our time watching alone. Playback is a virtual space where communities can stream live sports together, with everyone perfectly synced up. Creators can hop on stage, deliver their own play-by-play analysis and commentary, and invite viewers up for Q&A. Playback makes watching sports fully interactive and a social experience. From playing fantasy sports, repping your favorite players and teams, and watching with the commentators and communities you care about, win or lose, sports are best enjoyed together. Join our community by going to playback.tv/ETB network to find out more, including our live stream schedule. And now back to the show. Welcome back to Sarah Says So. We're going to transition over to the WNBA and start off with Caitlin Clark's injury. But really quick before I get into that, but right before I sat down to record today's show, I actually noticed that I read the Athletic article about the WNBA concluding their investigation into the alleged race behavior at the Sky Fever game, which was like a really heavy, substantial part of the episode last week. And so I wanted to read the statement really quick. The statement is from yesterday. Well, you're listening on Friday, so it's from Tuesday, May 27th. I'm just going to read the full statement. It was tweeted out by WNBA Communications, if you want to read it yourself. But they issued the following statement regarding the Sky at Fever game from May 17th. Quote, we've investigated the report of racist fan behavior in the vicinity of the court during the May 17, 2025 Chicago Sky at Indiana Fever game. Based on information gathered to date, including from relevant fans, team, and arena staff, as well as audio and video review of the game, we have not substantiated it. The WNBA is committed to fostering a safe and inclusive environment for everyone and will continue to be vigilant in enforcing our fan code of conduct. So I just wanted to touch on that really quick because I know that was a huge part of last week's episode, and honestly, I'm not going to sit here and walk back anything I said. I still think that the vitriol from fans and media towards Angel Reese, especially when Caitlin Clark is involved, is absolutely freaking crazy. And I'm not going to sit here and be like, oh, they're lying. They could have substantiated the claims. Honestly, I don't know how you substantiate claims like that. And I'm not going to sit here and say it happened when their investigation says that it didn't. Or when, that's what they, well, that's, fine. But the problem isn't, I'm worried that the conversation about it now is going to be, oh, Angel Reese's fans are, making things up, blah, 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 blah. Whether you think that or not, you can't ignore the fact that there is, a huge, incredible problem with racism in this entire situation, that this entire situation and this, quote-unquote feud between them has been largely created by the racist perceptions and reactions of fans and media. And the whole time I said that, the PWHL Westward expansion ban was on, so that's hysterical. My bad. That was not about PWHL Westward expansion, in case you were confused. But speaking of Caitlin Clark, we're going to talk about her injury. So, like, really unfortunate. I don't want anyone to, like, sit and listen to this and be like, oh, like, Sarah hates Caitlin Clark. Like, she's probably happy she's injured. Like, I'm not at all. She was supposed to come to Chicago soon, and I was going to go to the game. Or, like, I didn't have tickets, but I was, like, really thinking about getting them. And now I don't really want to because I wanted to, like, largely see her. But she's out for a minimum of 2 weeks. The team's going to update, I'm assuming, in, like, a week or probably at 2 weeks, what her status is then. But it's a left quadricep strain, and they came out with that after their 90-88 loss to New York Liberty. And already the prices are dropping, so Caitlin being out for a minimum of 2 weeks will put her out for the next 4 games that the Fever play. So they're supposed to play the Mystics twice, the Sun once, and then the Sky next Saturday, like I mentioned. And USA Today put, like, a whole piece out about it, and apparently the average ticket price dropped from $137 to $80 for those 4 games, and the tickets overall were 71% more expensive before her injury. So that's, like, crazy that they're already seeing it in that aspect. But, like, another crazy aspect is that her odds to be named the 2025 MVP are already dropping. They were at plus 195 at the beginning of the season, and, like, to be honest, I don't claim to know a lot about, like, sports betting and stuff, but, like, the fact that immediately following this injury, this is, like, huge news that, like, her strain is so significant that odds are dropping and ticket prices are dropping. Like, I think that's so wild, and, like, just really goes to show, like, how much the attention around women's basketball has changed, and, like, how much of that has been because of Caitlin specifically. It's just, like, wild to, like, witness. As, like, phenomenon is, like, too crazy of a word, I feel like, but, like, the Caitlin Clark effect is, like, real. And, like, I'm sure that if anyone's, like, writing, like, some sort of, like, paper or thesis about it, like, this is going to be part of it for sure. It's also crazy that this, like, extended absence of these 2 weeks that she's out will mark the first time she's missed a game in her college or pro career. So she's ending a streak of 183 consecutive games played, which just absolutely blows my mind. I think that's crazy. She's such a beast, and, like, as much as I, like, take issue with, like, the whole Angel Reese situation, I do think Caitlin needs to be a little bit more vocal about it, because, like, not to get back on my soapbox, but white silence is violence. But Caitlin Clark is an absolute beast. She's such a good player, and, like, I'm super bummed for her that she's out. I really hope it genuinely is only 2 weeks. But I guess we'll just have to wait and see, unfortunately. So, yeah. But, so that, like, is a little Fever-specific update. But also I just want to go over the standings a little bit. So, obviously, like, there haven't been that many games played. I've only been 5 for most teams, 6 for a couple. But the standings are already at a really interesting place. You have the Lynx and the Liberty are at the top. The Lynx are above the Liberty technically because they have 5 wins versus 4, but they're both undefeated. So that'll be really interesting. I can't remember when they play. I don't think it's soon. But that'll be a really good, like, I doubt they'll necessarily remain undefeated until they meet each other. I mean, that would be really cool and, like, sports poetic, but I'm just interested overall to see kind of what happens when they meet. So Lynx are at number 1, Liberty number 2. Following that, you have the Mercury. So Phoenix, they're 4-1, and then Atlanta Dream, they're 4-2. So they're just below the Mercury. They've played more games, but they've technically lost more. And then you have Seattle Storm in 5th with 3-2, and then the Indiana Fever, the Las Vegas Aces, and the Golden State Valkyries are all 2-2. Technically, it's Fever, then Aces, then Valkyries, just based on, like, I think, conference or something. I'm not entirely sure. I'm just going off of what the WNBA website has. And these standings are, of course, like as of Wednesday afternoon, because I record on Wednesdays, but I pulled them like just before recording the episode. So they're as current as they can be for this recording. But rounding out that bottom of the standings for positions 9 through 13, you have the Washington Mystics are 2 and 3, the Los Angeles Sparks are 2 and 4, and then the Dallas Wings are unfortunately 1 and 4. Paige Bueckers did not arrive and make things beautiful, unfortunately for them. And then, really unfortunately, the Chicago Sky and the Connecticut Sun both have not won a game. I think things are a little bit dire for them out there. Chicago's 0 and 4, Connecticut's 0 and 5. I'm going to the Sky Wings game tomorrow, so Thursday. For like my grad school, I have to like do a project for it, and I'm like really excited to see Paige Bueckers play, obviously, because oh my god, that's gonna be so awesome. But I want her to win to get another win, but also I would like for the Sky to get on the board. So that'll be really interesting to kind of see what happens there, so to speak. And again, that's like the game Thursday, but by the time you're listening, that'll have already happened. So what is actually more important is the games that the games that are coming up this weekend. And here we go. There it is. There are a lot. So there are 5 games Friday, 1 game Saturday, and 4 games on Sunday. If you're watching on the YouTube, I just popped the graphic up on the screen, but if you're only listening, I'm going to read through the matchups as usual. And as always, they're all in Central Time, because I'm in Central Time, and my word is law. So Friday, you have 2 games at 6:30, so that's going to be Connecticut Sun at Indiana Fever and New York Liberty at Washington Mystics, and then 3 games at 9. So the games at 9 will be the Los Angeles Sparks at the Las Vegas Aces, Minnesota Lynx at Phoenix Mercury, and Atlanta Dream at Seattle Storm. The one lone Saturday game will be a rematch of what I am seeing on Thursday, but it will be the Sky in Dallas playing the Wings, and that'll be at 7 Central. And then the 4 game Sunday, Connecticut Sun at New York Liberty at 2 p.m. At 5 p.m., you have 2 games, the Phoenix Mercury and Los Angeles Sparks, or at the Los Angeles Sparks, and then the Las Vegas Aces at the Seattle Storm. And then rounding out the weekend at 7:30, you have Minnesota Lynx at Golden State Valkyries. So, as usual, lots to watch. Unfortunately, not a ton on Saturday, but, maybe you watch the 7 p.m. game on Saturday, and then you go and you tear up the town. And then when you're perhaps a bit worse for wear, shall we say, on Sunday, you can just lay on the couch and watch the WNBA all day. That would be cool. Especially because the Sunday games are the beginning of the Commissioner's Cup play, so that's going to last through June 1st through the 17th, and obviously that Sunday is June 1st, and then the championship for the Commissioner's Cup is July 1st. So I'll be bringing you updates about that kind of as it progresses, but just one of those other things to keep an eye on. Yeah, that's kind of all we've got for WNBA info. I know it's less today than usual, but sometimes that's just how it shakes out, and I get to do what I want on this show. So you can listen or not listen, and that's really up to you, but I think you should listen. Final quick notes. There are no NWSL games this weekend. And then next week, I'm going to talk about the PWHL protection list and who by that day has been signed during that signing period or whatever. But the Athletes Unlimited Softball League starts on June 7th, and so I'm going to try and compile a nice little informational overview for you guys about that league. I'm super, super excited about that and really looking forward to talking about that specifically. Um, and then I also have in my notes the Mary Lou Retton DUI, just because I was like blown away by that. And I'm also in like a news producing class in grad school. And I like as a joke was telling my group the other day that we should put this in the newscast, and then we didn't. But I still think it's like kind of wild. It like happened apparently like earlier this month, but it only came out in like the court records the other day. But basically, she like was driving and like slurring her words and failed the sobriety tests, and like there was wine in the car and she smelled like booze, and she refused to take a breathalyzer and all this stuff. I mean, this is all according to the BBC and technically alleged, but I think that's kind of crazy. And also, if you like don't remember who she is and you're like sitting there going, "Why do I know her name?" She's like a former U.S. Olympic gymnast, and she was like very good. So that's probably why. She was on like Wheaties for a while. She was named America's Sweetheart. She's in the International Gymnastics Hall of Fame. So like hope she's okay. I don't know. It's like that sometimes I just like see things and I'm like, wow, that blows my mind. And now I have a place to talk about them. So we're gonna talk about them. But yeah, like I hope she's okay. That's just like it's crazy. I feel like that it's like like really talented professional athletes kind of having a fall from grace, so to speak, is always something I find really interesting, and I'm always like wondering like what the impetus was behind it. And so I wonder if anything will like come out about that, but I'm not sure. Again, hope she's okay. I don't like want to be one of those people who's like sitting here being like, oh, like let's talk about like how horrible her life is for like my gain. Like that's really not it. I'm more just it's one of those things that like makes you think like what has kind of like gone on since she's been so in the public eye. Like I know she was like really sick like 2 or 3 years ago, but I'm not really sure other than that. So yeah. But other than that, that is pretty much all I have for you today. So thank you so much for listening. And just in case you forgot, make sure you follow and subscribe to at Sarah Says So ETB on all of the platforms. So Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, anywhere you get your podcasts. And then the episodes are posted under ETB Network on YouTube. And I will see you next week for episode 3. And as usual, that'll drop at noon Eastern, 9 Pacific, and 11 Central Time. So make sure you come back for that. We're going to, again, go over Athletes Unlimited and some PWHL stuff, as well as all of the general like WNBA news for the week. So make sure you don't miss it. Thanks and have a great weekend.